PS Kitchen is located at 246 West 48th Street, right in between Times Square and Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan. PS Kitchen is dishing out sophisticated fare using fresh ingredients. They have signature cocktails, a late-night menu, and a full event space upstairs. Check it out, ps-kitchen.com. They serve brunch, lunch, and dinner until 11 p.m., Sunday to Wednesday, and until 2 a.m., Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. It's plant-based, and all profits go to charity. So check them out, ps-kitchen.com.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
To infinity and beyond.
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
It's classified.
You talking to me?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
I can't lie!
Expecto Patronum!
Entertainment X.
You never know what you're gonna get.
For this episode, I sit down with Iman Oubou. Iman is the founder and creator of SWAAY, which is a groundbreaking digital publication that harnesses the style and glamour of today's business-minded women. At SWAAY, they believe that women's interests are more diverse than what traditional magazines portray. And she has been portraying a lot of diverse ideas and ways of being among women through this publication. We discuss procrastinating, being direct, and standing up for yourself. Those are some of the themes that we touch on through our interview. It's a wonderful interview, and she really breaks down her methods of operation, if you will. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and keep on keeping on. We are back, and today with me is Iman Oubou. Thank you, Iman, for sitting down with me.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
We met at Digital Hollywood a few months ago, which was a
Yes.
wonderful. So I've had on a few people from Digital Hollywood. Corinna Karsten, I think was she the moderator for your panel?
No, we had
no?
a guy from Pinterest that moderated our panel.
It escapes
sure.
me. So how much happens in like 3, 4,
Yeah.
5 months? However many months it's
I
been.
remember that day. It was like a storm outside, and now it's really
yeah.
a heat wave outside.
It was like a
Time
friggin'
goes by so
snowstorm.
fast.
It really does. So we have a bunch of stuff we're going to hit on. Let's get right to it. I want to know, what did your parents teach you about work ethic?
Well, besides working really hard for what you want to get, so we've never really been given things when we were growing up. My parents always wanted us to work for what we wanted, whether it's toys or whatnot. So nothing comes to you easy unless you put in the work. And that's something now that, of course, has helped me with running a business and just working towards any of my goals. So hard work pays off is a big motto that runs around the house.
Did they give you chores growing up? Was there like a discipline in the household?
Yes and no. You know, growing up in Morocco, most families have maids and drivers. I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. And so we grew up with having maids and drivers and basically people serving us. And in a way, I feel like that made us a little bit spoiled. Even I think it took me years to start even making my bed in the morning. But at the same time, when it comes to just if I wanted something, my parents would give me a whole lecture about working for it. But I think at the house, they couldn't help but, you know, that's how we were raised. Like we have maids and everything is cooked on the table. Like I didn't really grow up learning how to cook because we have that. And I always tell my mom, why? So like,
I need that in the city.
So we had chores just to have chores and for my parents to really teach us how, you know, to work for what we want to get done and just to take care of ourselves. But at the same time, we didn't have chores because we also had maids and service. So it's interesting. But when we moved to the US, things have changed. And I think that was part of the culture shock.
Yeah, so let's touch on that now. Moving from Morocco to Colorado. How old were you when that?
I was 15.
So was that, because those are formidable years for a child, 15.
Yeah, that's like puberty, teenagers, hormones.
All of it. So like, what was that for you, meeting a different culture, or just the change in geographical location?
The first year, it was really tough for me. I'm not going to lie. I actually went through some kind of depression. I really didn't want my parents to make the decision because I thought, and I still do think, we had a great life in Morocco. And I feel like most people that move to other places because they're looking for a better life. But it didn't make sense for us because my parents had great jobs. We had a great life, better than what we had moving into Colorado. So when we moved to Colorado, we had to basically move in with my aunt in her basement. So it was like 4 of us in a small basement in Aurora, Colorado. And I'm like, what is going on right now? I just finally became popular in high school. No, just kidding. But it's like having to start over. I think for me also, I had to learn English. I failed English in Morocco. It was not a language I liked or spoke. So having to kind of start over was really painful. And getting, adapted or fitting into high school culture that we didn't have back in Morocco was really tough as well.
Okay. So then how long, was it about a year of like adjusting for you, or did it take?
Yes, I think it was about a year because the following summer we moved, when we didn't move back, we visited again Morocco for 2 months. And I think I had my closure then. Okay. Because the move was pretty sudden. So like we just got up and left. And then I didn't have time to have kind of closure with Morocco, with my friends, with my family. The following summer I came back, and at the time, so everybody from my high school, most people I knew kind of graduated, and so they were on to their new life in Europe. And I just felt like, okay, maybe it's not so bad. Everybody else is moving as well. And ultimately, if I had stayed in Morocco, I would have probably just moved to Europe for college. So I kind of just found a way to make peace with it. And then I took the summer to enjoy myself, the last moments in Morocco, spend time with family. And then when I got back, that was my senior year in high school, I had a much more fun way of, fitting in and enjoying myself. And I was like, okay, you know what? This is a new adventure. Let me enjoy it. Why not?
Yeah.
I finally made friends too. So I think it made sense at the time. People started accepting me.
Yeah. Did that like open your mind in terms of like the size of the world? You know what I mean? Like moving from Morocco to Colorado and having that kind of just like, oh, wow, the vast. And I asked this question because I've traveled a lot recently, and it's just changed my perception on the size of the planet and how many people there are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but we also traveled a lot in Europe growing up. So my summers with my parents were always in Spain or France or other parts of the world, or actually just Europe mostly. But we've never been to America. So that definitely opened my eyes into a whole new culture and a language I've never spoken. And just, I mean, from then on, I became a traveler. So now I think that really made me want to explore the world more and explore new cultures. But at the time, being, a teenager, you don't really think that far ahead. You're very kind of stuck in the whole being, accepted with high schoolers and being in, the team and tennis team and just wanting to fit into high school. Because at the time, high school is your world. You don't know any better. You don't even know what you want to do after high school. So I was very kind of focused on that. And I wish I hadn't been. But now I'm like, okay, well, what? I was a teenager. What can I do?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you can't be so tough on yourself, right? But that's so true. Yeah, I didn't really think of. Yeah, I agree. Kindness. What did your parents teach you about kindness?
I can't pinpoint exact. I've always been a kind person. I don't know how and when that started in terms of teaching, but my parents themselves are very kind people. So me, especially, growing up, seeing my mom and dad interact with people at their jobs, at their businesses. Like I used to go with my dad all the time to his job on weekends because he worked really hard and worked on weekends as well. Yeah. And it really, I've seen how kind and nice how kind he was with his own employees. And he was a CEO of a company. Even when big issues arise, he still kept calm and really never tried to blame it on someone specifically, but really worked with his team in a kind way to be more solution focused versus blaming someone for doing something wrong. And that really affected me in a positive way on how I treat and talk to people, especially also my team. And same with my mom. I mean, she had a small business in Morocco, and she ran a dry cleaner. And I would see her, like a lot of customers coming in yelling and being really, grumpy and mean. But she kept calm, and she was very kind to them because, of course, it's part of customer service, but that's just really who she is. So I feel like seeing them being successful while also being kind has taught me that you can be both.
Yeah. So what led to entrepreneurship? And I know I'm jumping around a lot here. What led to that? What led to wanting to create?
I don't know that there was a specific moment. I mean, what led to what I'm doing now was very accidental and organic, but I feel like my entrepreneurship passion happened around when I took a certificate of entrepreneurship and bioinnovation in graduate school, and I that was my favorite class. And it was really about the power of creating and marketing, which I think for me was the first time I really came across a course that taught me something of that sort, because everything else prior to that was very science focused and very experiments and just kind of being in the lab and not so much being out creating something that the people want. So that really led me to have that goal that one day I want to create a company on my own. And actually my thesis was about that. If you had to create a product in biotech field, what would that be? And at the time I was creating a non-invasive diabetes monitor for your glucose levels. And I actually did a presentation around that and thought about pursuing it too at some point, but then I realized that eventually it existed. But, I presented a thesis around it and a kind of a small startup presentation. And then one of the judges actually ended up becoming my employer, because he loved the idea so much that he reached out to me afterwards and hired me as kind of a lead scientist in his startup. But it was in cancer, so it was different.
Oh, okay.
But I think that class really was when I opened my eyes on the world of entrepreneurship. And we had a great teacher or professor. He's a doctor as well as an entrepreneur, and he was just so fierce. And I think that built up the whole kind of aspiring attitude of becoming a creator and an entrepreneur one day.
What led to the cancer research?
Well, one is the opportunity that presented itself to me after I presented my thesis, and two is when I was growing up, and one of our maids that kind of became my godmother in a way passed away from breast cancer, and not because it was untreatable, but because she didn't have access to competent doctors or better treatments in the hospital, because she did come from a remote area in Morocco. So that really prompted me to think about ways of solving that problem eventually. And cancer research and just oncology in general is such an interesting field, and definitely needed right now given the rates of cancer in people. So I thought, I've always wanted to be a doctor growing up, but I didn't really think that I could handle kind of treating patients and on a day-to-day basis. I'm so sensitive, I cry easily. So I went on medical missions, and I realized that. That's when I was like, look, I love doing this, but I don't think I can do it from a practice perspective. I think I might just pour my passion for it onto the R&D side of things and more the biotech corporate world. And so when the opportunity presented itself, I was like, I'm going to jump on this, because eventually I wanted to make a difference in the field. And the technology that the CEO at the time presented to me was really interesting and definitely filled a gap in the field, especially within the targeted kind of nanotherapy. So you're not doing chemotherapy anymore, which is the reason why most people become weak and most people even end up passing away, is because the chemotherapy is so bad for your body and for your healthy tissues. So when you have a targeted therapy, it's even better. I thought that was fascinating. I did some research. I loved it, and I was on board. And unfortunately, the startup ended up actually running out of funds, and they had such a difficult time raising money for their next round and to expand on the vision. So that's when I decided to just take my last medical mission to Morocco, and I came back and stayed in New York. So it all happened very quick. But yeah.
Was that over a series of like 2 months?
No. That I worked at the startup for a couple of years. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I went on a medical mission in 2013 to Morocco. And then I stayed there for a month. And then when I came back, I just stayed in New York because I was like, well, I don't have a job going back to Colorado. I might as well test my luck in New York. And I've always wanted to live in New York because I think there are more opportunities. And I'm definitely a city girl, not an outdoors girl as much. So I felt like I hit a dead end when it comes to opportunities in Colorado. And I love Colorado, but it wasn't for me when it comes to career opportunities.
Yeah.
So I moved to New York, and I didn't have a plan or a job. I literally just landed here, and I ended up like applying for a job on Craigslist, and then I got it in the next 2 days. So I was like, wow, this is like meant to be for sure.
Yeah. What was that job?
Fashion PR.
Okay.
So random.
But was that your foray into creating SWAAY, or when did that come about in your mind?
Well, I was like, this is my time where I can try anything new. And I've always had an interest in fashion. I did pageantry in Colorado as well. And I had a blog at the time, a little mini fashion blog. It wasn't nearly as successful as the ones we see nowadays because it was a hobby on the side. My mom took my pictures. It was cute, fun time to spend, cool time with my mom, and she enjoyed it. Yeah. So I think that helped, like being a Miss Colorado at the time and also having that fashion blog helped me land that job in a way, even though I didn't have any PR experience or fashion experience per se. I remember watching with my mom the reality show called People's Revolution. I forgot what her name was. She's kind of one of the best publicists here in New York. And I thought that was a really interesting field. And I'm like, well, you know what? This is my time to try it. It was also taking place in New York. So I'm like, let me see what jobs I can find here. And this is only temporary. It's just a way for me to finally settle down in New York, find an apartment, be able to pay my rent, and just survive. So it worked out. I applied for a couple of job listings, and then I got one, and I actually really enjoyed it. I loved it.
Wow. It's so interesting to hear the beginning of your time in business and how it leads you to creating your own company, because even my creation of this podcast has been like 2 years in the making of like, I want to do something. I don't know what it is. Yeah. How do I start? When do I begin? Do I have permission? Should I give myself permission? Am I waiting for permission? Did you go through a series of like, do I get permission? Do I wait for permission? Or were you like, I'm taken? No,
every day I still do. I actually just asked this question to myself yesterday. I don't know why, but like sometimes I have a little bit of a self-talk, and you kind of have, your goals get bigger and bigger and your vision gets bigger and bigger. I feel like after every rejection or after every no, you're like, okay, fine, I'm going to prove you wrong. Here's even a bigger vision that I have. Above you. So, and then the question becomes like, what actions do I need to take to get there? And who's going to help me, or who's going to give me that leg up or something of that. So you go through that and you ask your question, but at the end of the day, you just got to start somewhere. So whether it's doing research and finding someone that you can reach out to and even just get advice from them or guidance, that was my first steps. And that's how the podcast started, is because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I needed some kind of guidance, and I needed to surround myself with people that I wanted to become and then I started doing that, and it turned into a podcast. So I think I owe all of the successes and sometimes the failures to basically that time of my life where I decided to just make networking my primary focus, because and not the networking where you go to events and you're like, oh, okay,
exchange
here's my name.
Cards.
Yeah, exactly. I hate that. Actually, you would never find me, and I try to leave events early. I just I don't like it for some reason.
I'm out.
You know why? Because I feel like it's a little bit forced. I think
a little bit.
a lot forced. Okay, but I think when you reach out to someone intentionally, and it's the same with me, like I get a lot of emails and people trying to network, quote unquote, with me. But if people reach out to me for a specific reason intentionally because they read something about me or because they saw that I did this and it relates to them, you have my attention. If you're just reaching out because you're reaching out and you want to network, I'm not interested because no one has time to figure it out. It's like when you reach out to people, reach out to them with a specific ask.
Yes.
Because to me, it now bothers me because I'm like, I get these emails all the time. Hi, Iman, it's so great what you're doing. I love it. And it's all about, women empowerment and whatnot. I would love to collaborate. That's it. And I'm like, I'm not going to answer. Why? Because how am I going to collaborate? So it's up to me to find out how, like, what do you have in mind? Why should I collaborate with you? Like, give me more meat to that email. Yeah. So especially for busy people, like you really have to grab their attention. And I mean, I feel like I have perfected that craft and that's like one of my strengths. And I don't say that very often, but the email game and the reaching out to people and getting responses back, I feel like if I can get paid for that, I would be a millionaire now.
You're like 10-0. If you're willing to break down a little bit what your strategy is, or like is there a way you structure an email? Is there specific things you always have like a formula where it's like a specific connection with the person and then a question and then
I think everyone wants a formula, and that's the problem. There isn't, because even if I were to put, a structure or formula to all the successful emails I've sent, they were all spontaneous. I didn't sit there and like craft the perfect email. It was like, I read about this great CEO, and also I think part of the success of these emails because it's actually genuine, it's authentic. There is a real connection between what they've done and what we're doing and how we can truly collaborate. So it's not forced. So if you're authentic about the email and you're like, you also keep it brief. Don't tell me your life story, but just say, I start off usually by saying how I even found out about them. People want to know how you know who I am. So you're like, I either read about you here, or you even link to the piece that you read about them, or I met you here, or you spoke at this event, and I love what you said about XYZ. Right. The more specific, the better, because it shows that you were really paying attention, and it's not one of those annoying emails that people just want something out of you. And then the second part is like a quick intro of who you are. Hi, I'm doing this, and here's what I do. And then the third part should be about why you're reaching out. So, I'm reaching out today because we're doing this awesome project about this, and I thought you were the perfect fit for this because XYZ. So it's very simple, because people want to know who you are, why you're reaching out, how you found out about me, and what you want, and how you can help me. So don't always ask, you also show how you can add value. So for me, when I reach out to people about, being on a podcast, it's about, I'm not trying to take a lot of your time, but I'm helping you share your story to a bigger audience of women that can relate to it, And this is what is needed for women out there. So I think they saw the value of it, so they were willing to make time for it. So if you don't have any value to show, it's really hard to get answers, because I see it too, and I'm like, well, that's great. I love that you love what I do, but
I love what I do too.
Yeah, but like I don't have time to figure out how I can help you or how you can help me. If you don't have it all figured out already, don't reach out. Figure it out first,
Yeah, and that's just life. That's just life. There was two things that came to mind when you said that. One, I understand what you're saying because I have done that before. I've had vague wishes that I've sent to people. And there's like that saying, life punishes the vague wish and honors the specific ask. And the second I started to get specific with this is what I love, this is what I'd love to do with you. If it doesn't fit in your schedule, completely understand. Yeah. I love what you do. Yeah. All of a sudden you start getting more yeses and okays because it's literally what you're saying.
Yep, exactly.
I love that. And it comes from here, the heart. You can't see it on the podcast, not the head. Okay. So how is it for leadership, in terms of leadership, how has that evolved for you from like early days of being a leader to now as a leader? Are you still learning things about being a leader?
You're always learning. I'm always learning. And actually, I learn a lot from the setbacks and the failures and rejections than I do from my successes and achievements. And I know I've experienced that specifically over the past year. I think 2018 has been a big year for me in terms of learnings and revelations and just what people haven't prepared me 4 when it comes to running a business while fundraising. It is a full-time job, and trying to balance both while also growing a team and being there for them is extremely challenging. And everybody is out there trying to tell you that yes, you can and should do it all, but I don't think it's true. At least I don't want to be in that position anymore, where you feel like in the past year, I felt like I was so caught up with raising money. And this is, I think, the issue with the culture of the startup world now is that success is measured by how much money you raise. And at least it seems like it because of the press we see, the headlines on TechCrunch and whatnot. It's like, that's when people praise you, is when you raised, I don't know, $600 million. And that stuck with me, because now I found myself just chasing that versus actually spending time growing my own business, growing my own revenue.
On like the product
Exactly. And then I think I just came up for air in the past month, and I realized how much time I wasted doing that versus being a true leader with my team, being there for my team, expanding on the business and the vision, helping them through their mistakes, truly leading the entire operations versus letting them do the usual and the routine work and being out there chasing investors. I just absolutely hated that time, and I told myself I'm not doing that anymore until the business is standing on its own legs and we have revenue that completely supports us whether or not we get funding. Funding should only be a way to expand on the vision versus making it happen. And I think that those are the two things that I confused at the beginning of my startup career. Is I thought the only way to make this vision happen and keep growing it is by raising money, and then the revenue will come eventually. But that's not true, because you got to go with the revenue first, and then you got to go raise money. I mean, in a way, I kind of knew that, but I felt like because other startups done it that way, I can do it too. And now I definitely regret, going that route. But I learned a lot. I mean, at least now I feel like I broke into the investor and VC world, and I have all the connections I need for when the time is right. So I feel like I've done the dirty work and the groundwork. Now it's just time to really take it to a level where I have leverage now more than they do, and I negotiate better terms for myself because I don't need the money, but it'll be nice to have it to expand on it. So I think that's like where my leadership changed a little bit. And also what I learned a lot more is that you need to be more of a leader in your business versus outside of it. Because I think a lot of startup founders sometimes get caught up in being, public facing and the outside world, talking about what they do, which is good. That's important. And then trying to raise money and praising what they do more to the VC world and, speaking engagements or doing other things. And they may forget about the potential the potential the business has if they were involved more often. So my daily meetings were filled with only investor meetings instead of actually being in the office every day.
With the team.
Yeah, with the team. Well, of course I was in the office whenever I could, but most of my days were filled with investor meetings, and that was draining. Because a lot of them are no's, of course. So you come back to the office and you're like in a bad mood and you're, drained, and sometimes you second guess yourself. You're discouraged. You're like, maybe this isn't working, this is not great. So that's what I learned a lot.
That's a solid answer. Did the culture in your office change once you started spending more time there?
Yes. Yes, of course, because I wanted to give more support and be there for the team so they know. But I think, like I said, sometimes when you're so caught up with the rejections and the investor meetings and the outcomes from that, you become a little bit hard to deal with as a leader because you're kind of under pressure, right? So you become under pressure, so you put your team under pressure. Yeah. And so there were times where I was not easy to work around because of that pressure I felt. So it's really important to know how to navigate that and have a plan ahead of time. If you choose to raise money, then you should probably be at a point where you have a number two that takes care of everything in the office, for the operations
or what have you.
Not an assistant, but like you know, having a number two, meaning like everything you want done and the vision, that number 2 would be basically an extension of yourself. An assistant is more like, your assistant.
Literally your assistant. Yeah, okay.
But as like a COO would be your number 2. Someone that's on
understand.
management but under you that basically keeps track of everything being done, of the progress, of making sure the team hits their goals. So that is important because it's really tough to do that while also fundraising.
Yeah. How do you cultivate the people you surround yourself with? Because I've heard like that saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And there's so many people who want to work together, but like it's not their baby. So their commitment might not be as strong to the end product as yours. And I'm kind of curious, like how are you cultivating that? How is that coming about for you? Or does anything come to mind when I ask that question?
I think it's a trial and error.
It's definitely a trial and error.
Sometimes you think that someone you're surrounding yourself with is awesome and positive and great vibes until you find out that they're not. Especially when I think you find out the real, personality of people when they're under pressure or when things go wrong. So there are people that I surrounded myself with that were awesome when things were great, and then as soon as I had some issues or I needed their positivity or support
You're
and
like
just
in the
being
trenches
there,
and things are going wrong.
they became a completely different person, and I felt like it added more to the negativity around what I'm going through. So again, like you really can't tell, but I think doing, of course, your research, spending time with them, it's like a dating process. So before you bring anybody on board, I highly recommend that you spend some time with them in different situations. See how they do around other people. That's important. See how they do in meetings. If this is someone that you're, of course, thinking about bringing to the team or to your business, or as a partner or co-founder or whatever it is. So it's just really kind of exploring and taking notes about how they react to certain things, and then deciding for yourself if that's the kind of person you want around you.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't need people around you. Sometimes it's just you and your hustle. Like that's where I'm at right now. And I think it's okay to just completely disappear and go work on the things you need to work and focus on you and your hustle, and then come back and be social when you want. Like it's, you don't always need to surround yourself with people. Sometimes it's not a good thing. Yeah.
You don't. That was one of the biggest lessons I had to learn moving to the city. It's like you don't need to be around, first of all, friends all the time. Second of all, co-workers or co-founders and what have you, and having that alone time really gives you like when you're truly alone with yourself, you learn a lot
Oh my God,
about what
yes.
you're made of and what you really deserve or don't deserve. So that's like
I love
that
my
answer.
alone times, and like I'm also not scared to ask for it. Like when people just reach out and want to do things and plan things, and I'm really bad with answering texts as well and just emails, because I try to fully enjoy like the moment I'm in. And if I have spare time, instead of being on my phone, I'd like to journal. I like to talk to myself.
Can we talk about that for a second? No, it's not. It's like I talk to myself too.
Yeah.
Now it sounds like the crazy podcast. Now, is there themes you write about? Like, are there questions you ask yourself?
I write about, well, first of all, I write about my days and journeys. So like if something happened, I'm like, this is how I feel right now. This is why. And specific anecdote that I definitely want to look back on and be like, wow, this happened, this is how I felt at the time. So that years from now, I can look back and see, oh, maybe that was the worst time of my life, but look at me now, So it's like good to have those journaled. Yeah, because you also want to document your progress, how things have been and how they are now. And then I definitely journal my goals and vision. I think it changes every day, believe it or not. Like sometimes I would have ideas and a vision and it just gets bigger. Sometimes it gets smaller and it scales back. So I keep track of what it is every day, well, almost every week, to see how things progress. Sometimes you have great meetings that lead to something even better that you haven't thought about. And sometimes you have bad meetings that lead to you thinking about a different way of doing things. And so that's important to keep track of, because you might forget tomorrow. And with everything happening every day, my life is very like hectic in a good way. There's a lot happening, a lot of inbound opportunities, which I'm very grateful for. And it's hard to kind of sometimes stay focused. So with the journaling, it helps me kind of look back every day and be like, okay, this is what I said yesterday that I wanted to do and achieve this month. So that means here are the things that I have to take action on to get there. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you gotten better at saying no? Or is that something
I say
you
no
always
all the time now.
You're good
it's
at
my
that.
favorite word. Well, no, I haven't always. It is my favorite word. I haven't been good at it. I've been, especially when you're also in the public eye about being a support system and an advocate for women. Sometimes you have people reaching out to you wanting stuff because you say, and literally like my last Instagram story was like, I'm unreachable unless you're going to give me money, because let's not forget, I'm not running a nonprofit, I'm running a business. And sometimes people tend to forget that. They want things for free. They want my time for free. They want my advice, all of this. That I don't have time for that. And sometimes that loses me money versus making it. You know, I got to also run a business. And just because you are, and it's something I struggle with, just because you are so out there and vocal about supporting other women, it doesn't mean that you have to say yes to everyone out there that reaches out to you, because I can't handle it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's true. Because
Yeah.
then it's like, well, am I being selfish? Am I really an advocacy
But it's not being selfish.
But it's
If
not
I
that.
don't take care of my business and myself and putting us first, how am I able to further my mission of supporting other women? I'm trying to do it in a scalable way, not one by one, you know? So, of course, I always respond as much as I can. And you know, sometimes I say, look, this is not the right time. I'm sorry, but I'm happy to follow your, you know, progress and whatnot and get back in touch when the time is right. You know, it's not like I say no and then move on. I'm always very respectful about it and just very transparent and honest about my capabilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you don't take care of yourself, how the hell can you take care of anyone else?
And I don't think I have been, which is the bigger revolution. I feel like I've been putting everyone and everything first before me. And over this summer, I'm feeling the burnout. I felt it, and I felt like I was in a place where I put so much of myself and my energy out there to help, of course, advance and further the mission, which is always my number one. But I kind of lost myself in this whole process, and that's not good, because you can't run a great company if you're not great yourself and you're not taken care of. So now I've learned that, and that's great. I feel like I needed to go through certain things to learn that the hard way and really take it seriously, because I've been told that many times. Everybody tells me that. Everyone is like, you need to take care of yourself first before you think you can run a big company. And I'm like, you know, I'm fine. I'll be fine. You know, like I stopped going to the gym, and it's not good, because I've always been a gym person, you know, especially twice a day. And I now can feel how that took a toll in my life, because I feel like everything is work, and I don't have any time for myself to actually take care of my body, my health, my mindset, and that's important.
Yeah. It's so funny. Like, so many people can give you advice, but until you feel it,
But
it's
that's
like,
the thing. I don't think, I mean, advice is great, but you know, sometimes it's in one ear out the other, because it really takes a wake-up call for you to apply it sometimes. And I know that I'm that kind of person, unfortunately, because I think there are some people that do well with taking advice and applying it right away. I unfortunately feel like I'm so stubborn sometimes, and I'm just so driven and ambitious, and that's the downside of it, is like you're always chasing greatness and you always want to do more and be better. And sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself to be great is do nothing.
Isn't that the
you know, and
truth?
I need to make peace with that, because I'm like, I get anxious when I'm not doing something. I'm not in a meeting, and I'm not running around New York. I'm not going to this event. And this past month, I have completely done none of that and canceled out most, like, my meetings that are not, you know, immediately important. I didn't go to events, and it was life-changing.
Wow.
I was like, I can finally have, like, I'm making peace with myself. I'm spending time with myself. I'm getting to know myself again, which is important, because sometimes you got to reinvent yourself before you make greater things.
It's so, oh my goodness, it speaks so loudly to me, because I've had that thought in my life recently of like, I gotta go right now, I gotta do this. And then I picked up like meditating. Not long, like 15 minutes at a time, once a day in the morning. And it's just like, just turning off for a second or turning down is just like, whoa. you can make smarter decisions.
Yeah.
It's more, everything's just more intelligent. Okay, so I want to hop over to, so we were talking about waiting, and we were talking about and I was talking about this book beforehand, Wait, The Art and Science of Delay.
Oh, yeah.
And by Frank Partnoy. Great book, recommended to anyone listening. And he talks about procrastination and how it can be a good thing. And a bad thing, but a good thing, and kind of waiting and slowing down. And I'm kind of curious if procrastination in your life, if you've ever procrastinated, which I would imagine is a no, but if maybe, does anything come to mind in terms of that, in terms of like what benefits it's led to not reacting so quickly?
So yes, I always take time before I react. And even that comes to, I mean, it depends. So if we're talking about procrastinating for work to be done, I can't remember the last time I did that, because I feel like if I don't do it, who's going to do it? You know, I can't afford procrastinating right now. But in terms of waiting to reply or react to something, I'm a big proponent of that.
Okay.
And especially if it's something that, you know, evokes feelings or emotions that you need to react to, you need to take some time before you do that, because sometimes you can regret that. You know, you can't let emotions lead the way. And I do that with, obviously, I guess I do procrastinate when it comes to emails and replying to people, because before I do it, I want to be in a very zen place. And sometimes during the day, my schedule is so back-to-back and hectic that I feel like answering or doing something right there in that moment is not the right time for it. It's just, you have to be in a better place to do your best work. So yes, procrastinating until you find that time to do it is important. Procrastinating because you're lazy and you don't feel like doing the work, that's not so good, especially when you're running an entire operation.
Just good luck.
Good luck.
No, that's so smart though, and I found that works for me. If I'm writing an email to someone, so like for instance, occasionally in business, you get an answer that's less than satisfactory, and I'm like, naturally, you want to write like that. Not you, may want to write like a spite-filled kind of like, you know, blown off the handle. And I find that if I write it first, save it in a draft, go back, read it, realize that was completely over the top unnecessary, and then resculpt a very PG rated response after the fact. It's like, well, it works wonders, because I've never sent something you know, right off the cuff, because when you operate from an emotional place, it's like, it's no good.
Yeah, I've done that too. I have a lot of those drafts still in my drafts box. I've never sent them. But it's good to keep track of it. Like, this is what I would have told you, you know?
It's like, that would be a perfect like article, like a 30-minute article without the names of the people that it was going to be sent to.
But honestly, sometimes I wish you can get to a spot where you can finally speak your mind, because I feel like that sometimes takes a toll on me. Like, I don't like not telling people how I feel, like how I truly feel. And I've always been very blunt and honest, even in college. And like, excuse my language, but people called me a bitch because of that. But in college, I didn't care, you know, because I was like, I'm here to do my work. I did great in school. I went out and had my fun, but I've never let anybody kind of, you know, step over me or say anything or do anything that is not, you know, right. If they do, I always call them out, and I actually had a lot of fun doing that. And I feel like, no, it's true, because you feel very relieved, you know. You're like, oh, well, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm okay with you and we're all good when you did me wrong. Like, here's how I feel. And I never did it in a bad way. I was just like, I'm going to tell you how I feel, and you can expect that I'm always going to be authentic and honest with you. But I feel like after going through the pageant training, that I went back to being, you know, the proper
reserved,
you know, beauty queen, reserved. And then sometimes I hold back. And in business, of course, you have to, when you're running a business, especially when you're not at the top yet, you don't want to quote unquote burn any bridges. But sometimes I feel like those bridges might as well be burned, because there's no way I would ever work with them again. You know what I mean? So it's like, might as well tell them how you feel and how they really haven't been professional about certain things. But there's always kind of that fine line. Like, do I say it? Do I not? Do I just move on and like ignore it? It's tough.
Have you ever had your confidence mistaken for cockiness?
I don't think so. At least no one has told me that, so I don't know.
Okay.
But I do think I have my kindness mistaken for weakness sometimes. And again, that goes back to being very, direct. And that's probably the best way to do business nowadays. And that doesn't mean that you're not kind. It just means that you're going to speak your mind when people don't respect or appreciate your value. So I struggle with that a little bit, and sometimes I still do nowadays, but now I feel like I'm at a place where I learned so much and I've achieved and done so much for myself that there's no reason to hold back when someone disrespects you. You just be direct about it. And that way you kind of feel relieved about, that situation, and that they know how you feel. And, down the road, if you guys cross paths again, then it's not awkward. I feel like it's
what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I read an article that we talked about for a second before this interview about was it Too Pretty to Be a CEO?
Yeah. That's the name of my new podcast.
Yes. Plug it away. And I'm kind of curious if you're willing to expand on that for a minute or two. What mental headspace do you put yourself in and operate from when you come up against someone with that level of ignorance, who is ignorant enough to then share that with you when you didn't ask for it?
Yeah.
Is there a headspace you're in or a way you react?
I just smile. I feel like, it's true.
Yeah,
I smile because I smile because in my head I'm responding to them, but I'm not doing it in person. Not yet, at least. Eventually I'll get to a place where I feel like I could start calling people out if they make comments like that.
Yeah.
But at the time I was just starting off. This was like my first baby steps to launch a business, and that was the first comment I've gotten from the first investor I've ever tried to approach. And that's why it's the name of that article, and it's the name of the podcast. And maybe if I write a book one day, it might be the name of it, because it really shaped. And I think that's the motivation behind my achievements and my hard work and my drive. That phrase is literally what wakes me up every single day, because I want to prove ignorant people like that wrong, because it's so outdated, and so it's the stereotypes, the stereotypes that we have to face, especially as women at times, to get through and achieve our vision and make our dreams come true, are unbearable. And you're always too something to be something, so that's just an example of, some girls get told you're too,
too short,
pretty,
too tall, or whatever, to be a model,
exactly.
or whatever the whole thing
And
is.
so that inspired a campaign that SWAAY launched called #Sway the Narrative, because we were trying to change that narrative and shape a new culture for women. But at the time I wanted to tell him, like, well, you're too old to give me advice, How about that? So, but of course I didn't say that. I wish I did. But, eventually I think, again, doing the work and not having to, tell people, oh, here's why I'm going to be successful, or no, I'm not too pretty to be a CEO. Instead of responding back, I'd rather show through my actions and through my achievements and the legacy I'm building.
Yeah. Is there a common piece of incorrect advice you hear in the field of entrepreneurship, business owning, founding? Does anything come to mind?
A lot of people say follow your passion and the money will come. I don't agree with that all the time. Sometimes, you luck out and it does.
Yeah.
You just accidentally find something you're great at and then you make money tomorrow from it. Other times I feel like find your passion and follow it, but also find a way to make money from it. If there isn't, then you should probably just make it a passion and not a job,
I see.
And a lot of people get caught up with trying and wasting so much time making and being married to that passion, and years down the road they realize, oh, this is not how I can make a living,
Yeah.
So of course follow the passion, find it, but at the same time don't forget about knowing how that passion is going to make you money and make you survive.
Yeah, like a living wage.
Yeah.
That's like what you need to live. Do you have most gifted books or any favorite books that you've read recently or in the past that stand out in your mind?
There is a book called Ask and It Is Given. I've had it for so long, and I started reading it like 5 years ago, and I stopped. And and then I started reading it again recently. I think the author is Esther something. It's really like it takes some time to grab. Like it'll take some time to really grasp the concept and wrap your head around it because it's so interesting. It's very spiritual, very. And I've never really been that spiritual, but I'm really interested in that and I believe in that stuff, whatever it is. But it's kind of like what the law of attraction talks about, but in a very interesting way, and they show you processes for certain times in your life. Let's say you're, discouraged or in financial crisis. Here's how you can use your mind and your mindset to get out of that situation. It's very spiritual. So it takes some time to really understand it and practice it, but I love it. It's like it makes more and more sense to me the more I read it. It's not one of those books that is overhyped either, so it's not like a bestseller because
the subtle art of not giving
secret,
up
or whatever.
The secret,
yeah. So it's kind of The Secret, but this goes deep, way deep, and this like also talks about the authors talk about a spiritual experience that they had, and basically the book is mostly written by the spirits, quote unquote, that they have encountered. It's so weird. I know. I see your face.
I'm into it. I'm going to read it.
When I first read it, I was like, what is going on here? But then I read it all, and I'm like, holy crap, I want to read this again and again and again. So I read it now, and they have a good, like, the end of the book is all processes that you can turn into whenever you feel a certain way. And they have, like, a scale of emotions that they could tell you. So, like, this process is good when you're feeling frustrated. This process is good when you're feeling that. And I like that because it's action-oriented.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out. Thank you. Billboard quote, metaphorically speaking, if you could put a word or a phrase on a billboard for millions of people to see, is there anything that comes to mind?
Show, don't tell.
Show, don't tell.
That's actually a tattoo I'm getting as well. I love that quote, motto, tagline, whatever it is, but it's so true, especially in today's day and age where everybody talks about how great they are and everybody talks about how awesome they will be one day or how cool they can do. Like, everyone's just self-proclaimed something, which is good because it's great confidence. But there are very few that actually show the results behind that. Yeah. So for me, before I work with anyone, before I hire anybody, before I go listen to a speaker or whatnot, I don't want to hear about how great you are. I want to see how great you are. Like, show me the results you've been able to achieve in order for me to really see that greatness, because I feel like a lot of people now charge speaker fees for, let me teach you how to build a business. But I'm like, great, have you built a business before? Most of them are just graduated from, graduate school or business school, and they think they know it all because it's all from the book. But I'm like, I want you to speak from experience, not from what you read in, Gary Vee's book,
Yeah, no, I know you mean.
So, I mean, that's very important.
I like that. I really like that. And I really appreciate you sitting down and saying yes to this chat. This has been an absolute joy.
Thank you.
Where can we find you?
So you can find me on social media. My handle is at Iman Oubou, IMANOUBOU. And then our media company is at SWAAY Media, SWAAY with 2 A's. And then that's mostly it. You could tweet me or Instagram me.
Great. Amazing. Oh, this is so perfect. Iman, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Ladies and gentlemen, Iman Oubou.
You've been listening to Entertainment X, the podcast. You can follow Entertainment X on Instagram at _EntertainmentX_. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join Clay next week for another curiosity conversation on Entertainment X. Thank you for listening.